Hi there everyone and welcome along. In this video I'm taking a closer look at the Palladium cinema that once served the people of Stowmarket in Suffolk. I must admit that I used this cinema as a small boy growing up in the town. It's another cinema though lost forever, so we better get started. In Ipswich Street in Stowmarket stood the Institute and Lecture Hall, which was built by public subscription in 1874. There was a reading room, a billiards room and a large hall which eventually became the cinema. It was not the first time though that flickering images made audiences gasp with delight in the town. In the early years of the 20th century, on the Duke's Head Meadow, eventual site of the Regal cinema, travelling fairs were held, and these included the miracle of what was known as animated pictures. The Institute Hall was taken over by H.B. Sullings in 1911, who presented film shows as Sullings Animated Pictures. One of the early pianists accompanying these shows was Miss Winnie Stanley. Now the cinema showed short films until World War I, when it started to show full-length feature films, and at that time the town had a population of just over 4,200. Now John E. Salter took over in 1924 and formalised the cinema operation as a Palladium cinema. There was one show nightly with a matinee on Saturday. Admission in 1926 ranged from sixpence all the way up to 1 shilling and threepence. Now sadly we don't know what equipment was installed at the Palladium at any point in its history, although it probably utilised a hand-cranked machine in the early days. But the cinema did well, and projection equipment was updated, and later it was equipped for talkies, about 1930, starting off with The Trial of Mary Duggan, starring Norma Shearer and Lewis Stone. By 1935, the Palladium cinema was listing 385 seats, and there was still one show nightly and the 2 shows on Saturday. Now the dear old Palladium lacked much of the luxury and ambience found in buildings that were specifically designed as cinemas. The screen was solid and timber built. The black masking, instead of black serge cloth, was actually painted on, so there could be no provision for later innovations like CinemaScope, whereby that black masking actually moved to reshape the image area. The cinema was basic, lacking even screen curtains, but even so it was popular, and the staff were very keen to provide a good show for everyone. In 1936 though, VE8 Cinemas of Norwich opened their plush new Regal cinema in the town on what was the Duke's Head Meadow. The Regal incorporated the latest burgundy velour covered seats with velvet curtains throughout. This resulted in the Palladium being somewhat unfairly nicknamed the Bug Hutch. By the 1940s, Mrs. J.B. Salter had taken over and the seating had reduced to 350. We actually have 2 images of the Palladium paperwork at that time, which survive thanks to the Stowmarket Local History Group. During World War II, the Congregational Church next door to the Palladium took a direct hit from the Luftwaffe and was completely destroyed, but the Palladium survived. The Palladium became the focal point for children in the town during World War II, as it was a distribution hub for thousands of chocolate bars sent from Canada for the children of the area, probably the first chocolate children of Stowmarket had seen in quite a while. But as the Regal continued to be the cinema in the town, and owner Victor Harrison acknowledging that Stowmarket Regal was one of his greatest success stories, the Palladium continued to play second fiddle, and the writing was surely on the wall. In its final years, the Palladium was known by many as the Flea Pit, almost an unfair labelling really. Apart from Winnie Stanley, the pianist in those early days, the only other staff names we know for sure was Mr. Bridgman, who was a later manager, Pat Doherty and Patrick Drinkwater, but we don't know what jobs they did. Now let's look at a couple of comments from people who, like me, used the Palladium in the early 50s. Now I can remember the screen was always illuminated red from one of the projectors whilst people were going in. I think the front rows were just forms, but I might be wrong on that one. One person commented, on a Saturday they showed sometimes better films than the Regal. and me and my mates would opt for what they had to offer, usually Roy Rogers, Dick Barton and Flash Gordon for instance. Jan Hayward said, I remember going there, I think it had green paint. I went to a film called A Kid for Two Farthings, always remembered it. John Theobald says, I lived next door in the shoe shop called Leonard's from 1952 to 1956. We used to go round the side of the Palladium as there was a side entrance into our garden there. And there we would find pieces of film that had been cut out when repairs had been made to the reels. They were probably just thrown out of the window. Raymond Nunn commented, Saturday matinees, spring's coming through the seats, sixpence to get in, brilliant. So, almost inevitably, the Palladium Cinema closed in August 1959, most likely Saturday the 22nd, and the building was later demolished. To make way for, you guessed it, shops, where once the people of the town flocked and queued to see the both silent and sound films at the Palladium. Well, that's about it from me for now. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, particularly subscribe, that helps me a lot. Until next time, when we'll probably be looking at either the Langham in Pinner, North London, or we'll be looking at the Mayfair, later to become the Broadway, in Bungay in Suffolk. Until then, be good to each other and I'll see you soon. Ta-da!